As we start this morning's program, I am privileged to welcome to the program via Zoom Mr. Ronald John. He's with us this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Keith. How are you?
I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well.
I'm doing great.
Well, thank you for joining me. I read with great interest this column. It stood out to me as I read through the newspapers last week about children being tested before entering the school system. Now, given the fact that most recently a report was published indicating that some 2,500 students dropped out between the year 2020 and 2022, and you elaborated on the fact that 151 primary schools actually made up for this particular figure, why did you say that you were not entirely surprised?
Well, if I can go back even before that report came out, maybe even 10, 15 years ago, when I was in the education system, we had issues with children dropping out, with children being truant. And as a matter of fact, I was very surprised that the recent numbers was that low. And I am sure that with even greater investigations, that number would certainly have been higher. But that's the number they gave, and that's the number we're working with.
Mm-hmm. Well, given the historical context, you just mentioned even 10, 15 years ago, this was a situation that was happening. And the fact that you further said the article also exposed that some of these children turned to a life of crime. Is this a breakdown of the education system, a breakdown of the family home, a breakdown in society? Is it a combination of all these factors?
Very good question, Keith. Keith, it is a combination of all those questions, but and as a result, it has to be a combination of approaches to get us from that place. It seems that, and I just don't want to say this government, I would say past governments have always taken a single approach to dealing with crime. To deal with crime and its offshoot or its precursor being dropout in school, all the problems they have in schools, because not enough has been done to help children in the early stages of their education to ensure that they're functioning at an appropriate developmental level for their age group. Mm-hmm. If enough testing was done at an early age, then I think that many students will not fall through the cracks if they had good teachers. And I mean good teachers. I mean teachers who are well-trained, who understand the developmental level of children, who understands where a child should be at 3 years, where a child should be at 7 years, and who are able to identify early, even if they're not able to do it from a scientific point of view, but they could identify that something seems to be wrong, mm-hmm. that child could could do some early testing.
Let's for a moment, so let's just focus on that particular testing, because not many people will take too kindly to the word testing, especially coming from a psychologist. Could we focus on that a bit more? Could we break down precisely what you mean by testing?
Very good. And first of all, you don't need a psychologist to do some of these early and it's really early evaluation. It's really early evaluation. These things could happen in the classroom while they're doing a math class. This thing could happen in the classroom while they're doing English. It's just a matter of giving them a test to identify some level. Now, obviously, if there's an issue like autism or something like that, then the person would have to refer to a specialist. Mm-hmm. But there are many, many tests, and tests could be a frightening word, but let's just say there are many evaluation tools that one can use to see if a child is acting at an age-appropriate stage in their educational development. Mm-hmm. But Keith?
Yes, sir, go ahead.
I feel that even you and I, even having this discussion, getting lost with Even the language of using testing and to identify troubled children and to identify the holes in the crack in the system. One of the things I am very, very conscious about is what we teach children. What do children learn while they're in school? You see, now this may seem really out of the box, but I'm saying, hey, how come we don't teach children to be human? How come we don't teach children to what dignity is about? How come we don't teach children what it means to be compassionate? Those are things that children really need to know so that they can become better citizens, better contributors to society. And I agree with the fact that all this testing at some level have to be done. But trust me, most of the I was having a discussion with somebody about this yesterday, and I believe the budget for national security is probably, I don't know, twice times that of education. It needs to be the other way around, and where that money needs to go is really into better teacher education, better parenting. Okay, but when I say better teacher preparation, better teachers, showing teachers what they need to be and who they need to be in a classroom.
Mr. John, on that particular point, let me just interject for a moment here. Is it that you are suggesting that with the reform of the education system, which is something that has been spoken about for years now, very many years, and very little has been done about it beyond consultation, is it that teachers who are entering the service and teachers who are within the service already, perhaps for years, they themselves need continuous evaluation?
Absolutely. In most, so I taught up here for what, maybe 10 years. I taught in Trinidad for a number of years. And I know certainly in the US, every year there's you're required to do continuous education training. You're required. And people use that time to not just develop their academic skills, but use that time to see, how can I be a better person in a classroom? How could I better influence students in a classroom? I came across, and I must read it to you. It's very short, but I came across something some years ago that a teacher, a principal wrote, and he gave it to another principal. And he wrote this: I'm a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no person should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers. Children poisoned and educated by physicians. Infants killed by trained nurses. Women and babies shot and killed by high school and college graduates. So I'm suspicious of education. My request is, help some students to be human. Your efforts must not lead to learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, and educated icons. Reading, arithmetic, English are nothing if they do not help to make your students human. And to me, that was a very powerful statement, because it speaks, I think, to the heart of what real teaching is about. Sure, the academics must be there, but there must be enough in there to show students that there's a way to deal with other people. There's a way to deal with their friends. There's a way to deal with their parents. There's a way to deal with their grandparents. There's a way to deal with the leaders in society. Not once did I say this is about a government something or a government something. This is about a leadership problem in the country. And I'm saying leadership because on many angles, leaders have been failing in the responsibilities that have been put before them.
Well, so I often link the leaders that we have, and some within the last few years and to now, I link them to being as machines. So if we are expecting children, we're trying to teach them to be humans, I don't know how we're going to succeed if it is that we have machines that are the ones that are really teaching them. But on that particular point as well, this seems as though it goes beyond just the Ministry of Education, beyond just the Ministry of National Security, given the fact that reform and the education system has come under scrutiny over the last few years. In terms of proactive measures, where do we start in terms of looking for solutions beyond the classroom?
Well, am I tempted to say it? Let's just say we need to start with some fresh thinking, And let me say, in saying that, it isn't that we have not done some things in the past that would be universally helpful for our students. It's just that we have tried some things and it has not worked. And we have not given things time enough to work, or we have not done, we think we can just do one thing at a time, when the approach must be multifaceted. There must be collaboration with social services, there must be collaboration with national security, there must be collaboration with school support services. And I think all these things have been done in silos and not with a real coming together of heads, leadership heads, really coming together and finding out not just what do we do for children, but what do we do for this particular child? Mm-hmm. Because it's not a one-shoe-fits-all package. That's why I go back to the teachers in the classroom, because they have to be astute enough, they have to be sharp enough to realize that Chris, he needs something different, and Lisa, she needs something different. Though they may be acting out in the same way in school, they may have different underlying needs that need to be responded. Maybe one person needs their glasses tested. Maybe they can't see on the board, and that's why they're acting out.
Well, Mr. John, I must get this final question in, given the time is almost out. But if we were to really cater to every single need and perhaps every single specialty that is required in order to be more student-centric, especially on the individual's developmental level, isn't that going to require a lot of resources, perhaps of which we just don't have?
Well, two answers to that. One, I don't believe we don't have it. I think we spend what we do have badly. Mm-hmm. That's one. And two, it does not mean, remember, every term, X amount of students are entering the school system. There are students who you can see may come from high-risk areas. Okay? Maybe initially that's where you have to put the attention. But in spite of that, in the classroom, teachers are becoming more aware of students. They're interacting with students. Students are talking to them. They get great opportunities to pick up early. So it's not to say you have to have this mass testing of every student that come into the system, but certainly there should be a mass alertness to students entering the system and alerted to the developmental stages along the way.
Certainly. Well, Mr. John, I want to thank you very much for joining me on AM Prime this morning. It's certainly been a pleasure. This conversation has given us a lot to think about. And I do appreciate your column that was in the daily newspaper. But for now, sir, this is where we'll have to end it. And thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good day.
You too, Guy.
Yeah. Well, folks, Mr. Ronald John, psychologist, a very, very intriguing discussion indeed. It goes beyond just the student. It also focuses on the teacher, on those in authority, and even how the mismanagement of the resources that were available and are available to us has actually only added and compounded this issue. We take a break here on AM Prime, and when we return, we welcome our other guest this morning, focusing more so on our local features here, local film features. We'll be right back after this.